Thank you very much, Sister Monde. Good morning, colleagues, media houses, and sorry for starting 6 minutes late. We had kept a very good standard thus far. Thank you again, as usual, for responding in the manner you've done. I will try to share with you a statement which is a reflection of what the Cabinet attended to during the meeting. If we start with the budget speech, Cabinet welcomed the 23rd 2023 national budget, giving effect to critical interventions outlined by President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address. The speech detailed plans to tackle the energy challenge, reduce unemployment, poverty, and the rising cost of living, including combating crime and corruption. Whilst balancing our commitment to fiscal discipline, the economic growth and investment and the social wage continues to receive the bulk of the public resources, with 66 billion allocated to social development and 36 billion to fund the extension of the COVID-19 Social Relief Distress Grant until 31st March 2024. Furthermore, the increased allocations for all three spheres of government will help alleviate some of the financial pressures, particularly in health, education, and free basic services, where the cost of providing services are rising. On the quarterly labor survey, Cabinet welcomed the State SA quarterly labor survey for fourth quarter of 2022, which showed a slight but significant decrease in the rate of unemployment in the country, the official rate decreasing by 0.2% from 32.9 currently now to 32.7%. Positive as it is, we still are confronted with challenges on the labor absorption as far as young people are concerned. All sectors of society are called to drive job creation opportunities so that we can continue the downward trend in the unemployment rate as recorded over the last 3 quarters. Through our collective effort, we can break the stubborn cycle of unemployment in our nation. Government remains committed to economic reconstruction and recovery plan, which includes our mass public employment program and effort to support economic growth that bolsters employment after the devastation of COVID-19. Regarding our Deputy President, Cabinet confirms that Deputy President David Mabuza has resigned as a Member of Parliament, ending his term as a Deputy President of the country. Cabinet joined President Cyril Ramaphosa in thanking him for his exceptional service to the country over the last 5 years. Deputy President Mabuza served with distinction, and his contribution in building the country will forever be remembered by the people of South Africa. On the energy, Cabinet understands the frustration of citizens and business over the inconvenience and disruption caused by persistent load shedding. The commitments from the State of National Address and the budget allocation strengthen the capability of the state to fast-track interventions outlined in the Energy Action Plan. The recently published National State of the Disaster Regulations by the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs allows governments to respond more effectively and with the necessary pace to deal with the severe electricity supply constraints. Moreover, it ensures transparency and accountability by enabling departments to guide their sectors. Regular progress update will be provided. We have a special briefing on this tomorrow. The debt relief of 254 billion, subject to strict condition, will relieve extreme pressure on Eskom and enable it to undertake necessary investment and maintenance. Tax incentive to roll out rooftop solar panels not only assists households and business in generating electricity for their own use, but also supports the national grid. Under the expanded incentives for businesses, investments in renewable energy will allow business to claim a 125% deduction in the first year for all renewable energy projects with no thresholds on generation capacity. In the area of wage negotiations, Cabinet calls upon all parties to remain committed to the process of public service coordinating bargaining council collective agreement and to arrive at a solution that serves the best interest of our country. It is vitally important that we all work together for the good of our nation and her people. While the right to strike is protected, it must be done in a reasonable manner that upholds our democracy and the rule of law. Cabinet reminds everyone that those who are planning to strike must do so in a peaceful manner and should refrain from any form of intimidation and destruction of infrastructure and properties. In the anti-corruption space, Cabinet joined President Cyril Ramaphosa in his call for former Eskom CEO Andre de Ruyter to report allegations of corruption at Eskom to the police. Our crime-fighting institution stands ready to arrest and prosecute those who break the law. We call upon anyone with information related to crime and corruption to report what they know to the relevant law enforcement authorities. All of us are duty-bound to fight corruption and to the prescriptions of the prevention and combating of corruption activities, commonly known as PRECA Act, which requires people in position of authority in public and private sector to report all corruption activities. In the Financial Action Task Force space, Cabinet noted the decision by the Financial Action Task Force to list South Africa as a jurisdiction under increased monitoring, or more commonly referred to as FATF's grey list. While the FATF recognized the significant progress made by the country in addressing the shortcomings highlighted in its mutual evaluation report, it assessed that there is more needed to be done. Cabinet is cognizant that addressing the identified shortcomings will be in the interest of our country. Government is committed to work swiftly to strengthen the effectiveness of its anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing regime. On the Ugandan state visit, Cabinet welcomed the successful state visit by His Excellency President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni of the Republic of Uganda, South Africa, on the 28th February 2023. During the visit, the two heads of state addressed a business forum and explored trade and investment opportunities. They also witnessed the signing of memorandums of understanding on a number of areas, which included, amongst others, industrial development cooperation, tourism, transport, communication technologies, correctional services, and women, youth, and persons with disabilities. The Republic of Uganda is South Africa's 15th largest trading partner on the continent and the second largest in East Africa. Between 2017 and 2021, the total trade between the two countries reached about 3 billion. About the AU, President Cyril Ramaphosa, His Excellency, led the South African delegation at the African Union Summit in Ethiopia under the theme Open Code, Acceleration of Africa Continental Free Trade Area, Implementation, Close Quote. South Africa provided updates on the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. As chair of the AU Peace and Security Council, the country also provided an update on progress towards silencing the guns in Africa by 2030. As AU COVID-19 champion, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa presented proposals on how the African Centers for Disease Control can be strengthened and measures adopted to better prepare the continent for pandemics. Under the leadership of the President Cyril Ramaphosa, COVID-19 African Vaccine Acquisition Task Team was established and in support of the Africa Vaccine Strategy. South Africa also secured over 500 million COVID-19 vaccine doses for the continent. Further, the African Pandemic Response Fund was established, which mobilized $137 million for local production of vaccines, diagnostics, personal protective equipment, oxygen and critical medicines. The African Medical Supplies Platform was also launched to ensure access to vital medical supplies for all African countries. On the gender-based violence and femicide, government condemns the persistent cases of gender-based violence and femicide and continues to intensify its fighting through several interventions. This includes extensive legal reform, the establishment of GBV Response Fund, and the support for Tutuzela and Kuseleka care centers, which provide vital services for GBV survivors. Furthermore, partnership that government has forged with civil society, business, development partners, the faith-based sector and other sectors to work together to deal with the scourge of GBV remain critical. On health, Cabinet welcomed the deliberations of the historic International Medical Countermeasures meeting that the country co-hosted under the theme Open Code, Building Consensus for an Equitable and Sustainable Medical Countermeasures Platform for the Next Pandemic, close quotes. The meeting explored options to secure equitable access to life-saving vaccine, diagnostic and therapeutic for future pandemics based on the need and not on wealth. This began a consensus-building exercise ahead of the high-level meeting on pandemic prevention, preparedness and response at the 78th United Nations General Assembly this year. In a separate but related development, the recent Traditional Medicine Summit hosted by the Department of Health is part of resolutions taken at the World Health Organization, African Union as well as Southern Africa Development Community to integrate traditional medicine into the health systems. On the child immunization and cholera, the measles outbreak poses a risk to children who are not immunized. Parents and legal guardians are urged to ensure that their children are immunized as part of the nationwide child immunization campaign. Measles symptoms include fever, red eyes, running nose, and cough, typically appearing before the characteristic rash. Following the recent rise in cholera cases, Cabinet urged citizens to be vigilant on any symptoms, which include diarrhea, dehydration, vomiting, and body weaknesses, spread mainly through polluted water or contaminated food. The public is reminded to boil water, cook food thoroughly, and practice basic hygiene of washing hands with soap and water to prevent transmission. All people who experience cholera-like symptoms, with or without local or international travel history, must immediately visit their nearest health facilities. On the water security, Cabinet welcomed the launch of the country's largest reservoir, the Vlakfontein Reservoir in Gauteng, which can store up to 210 million liters of water equivalent to 24 hours of water demand and is expected to be completed in April 2023. The project has created about 220 job opportunities for the local communities and 110 jobs in Ekurhuleni local municipality. Cabinet called on South Africans to protect our water infrastructure by reporting vandalism to the police on 0800 10 111 and water leaks to your local municipality. Citizens can also play their part in using water sparingly. With regard to severe weather, the preparedness of disaster management teams limited the impact of heavy rains exacerbated by Cyclone Freddy that affected the northeastern parts of South Africa. Government continues to mobilize all available resources as part of national state of disaster to support recovery efforts in areas impacted by flooding. The spirit of Ubuntu was shown by the many NGOs, community, business and relief organizations who have assisted those in need. Our recovery is going to take a massive effort, drawing on the resources and capabilities of our entire nation. Residents are urged to stay indoors during stormy weather, never try to walk, swim or drive through fast-moving floodwater or rivers. And people living in low-lying areas should be aware of weather warnings and take the necessary precautions. On the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS represents a progressive program by government to systematically break the legacy of intergenerational social inequality of post-school education and training. Despite the challenges, NSFAS has made significant improvement, funding more than 1 million students with a projected budget of 47 billion. Students with declined applications for funding can lodge appeals online with the Independent Appeals Tribunal via the My NSFAS portal. Online voter registration. Cabinet called on all eligible voters to register online at https://registervote.elections.gov.za for the 2024 national and provincial elections. The Electoral Commission launched an online voter registration campaign on 20 February 2023 and appealed to the youth who are eligible to vote to register so that they can exercise their democratic right to vote. Citizens already registered to vote are also encouraged to check their voters' roll address and update their address if they have moved since the last general elections. Voters must register where they reside and vote where they are registered. You are eligible to register to vote if you are 1. A South African citizen, at least 16 years and older, and in possession of a green bar-coded ID book, smart ID card, or valid temporary identity certificate. On the United States alert, Cabinet noted the alert issued by the United States Embassy as part of the U.S. government standard communication to its citizens traveling and living in other countries. It indicated a level 2 travel advisory was in effect, advising them to exercise increased caution due to crime and civil unrest, as well as to stockpile 3 days' worth of supplies, medicine and first aid supplies. We want to make this point that government continuously monitors all areas that impact on our nation. Any concern is acted upon swiftly to ensure that the safety of everyone in the country. Should there be any risk detected, the government will be the first to inform the public so far. On the SAPS, South African Police, Cabinet is pleased that the South African Police Service has nearly cleared DNA testing backlog at its forensic service laboratories. This breakthrough will ensure that gender-based violence-related cases are speedily resolved. The South African Police Service has also added additional DNA testing capacity with the completion of a forensic laboratory in Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape, which will ease pressure on the existing laboratory in the Western Cape. Cabinet decisions on the National Strategic Plan for HIV, TB, and Sexually Transmitted Infections 2023-2028. Cabinet approved the publication of National Strategic Plan for Human Immunodeficiency Virus, Tuberculosis, and Sexually Transmitted Infections 2023-2028. The full version of the NSP 2023-28 will be released to the public on the World TB Day on the 24th March 2023 in Rustenburg in the Northwest. The National Strategic Plan proposes to deal with HIV, sexually transmitted infections, and tuberculosis through a holistic approach that includes preventive and therapeutic measures. This fifth National Strategic Plan for HIV, TB, and STIs, and it outlines the progress South Africa has made to deal with 3 diseases thus far. The 5-year plan provides a strategic framework for a multi-sectoral approach that is people-centered to eliminate HIV, TB, and STIs as public health threats by 2030. The drafting of the NSP, or the National Strategic Plan, was coordinated by South African National AIDS Council, commonly referred to as SANAC, which brings together government, civil society, and other social partners to build consensus and drive a well-coordinated, unified response to 3 epidemics over 5 periods. The process to develop this 5th iteration of our national plan was extensively consulted across society to secure the widest range of views and ideas, and building on the lessons learned from our previous plans. The National Strategic Plan on these 3 epidemics emphasizes the need to break down barriers and maximize equitable and equal access to services through resilient and integrated health systems. The inclusion of mental health services and social support is based on the strong association between HIV, TB, and STIs with gender-based violence and femicide, human rights violation, and inequalities. The new plan features an expanded scope for management of STIs, including viral hepatitis and human papillomavirus, which are common infections in HIV-infected individuals. Report on the outcomes of United Nations Framework Convention. Cabinet received a report on the outcomes of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which was held in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, November 2022. While South Africa acknowledges the challenges remaining in fighting the climate change, the gains various parties are making to address the issues are welcome. COP27 negotiations contributed to the historic decision to establish a fund to assist developing countries to respond to loss and damage caused by the climate change. It established a transitional committee to work on the modalities of this fund with a view of taking aid decisions at COP28 in 2023. COP27 also emphasized the need for increased momentum to reform the multilateral development banks and international financial institutions, and called on the shareholders of these institutions to take decisive actions to scale up climate finance in 2023 and make their institutional arrangement fit for purpose. The final COP27 outcome reflects the urgency of the climate crisis and the need to keep the 1.5-degree temperature target alive during what the International Panel on Climate Change calls the critical decade, including by providing a clear program to advance the mitigation agenda from now to 2026. Hosting of the World Waste Congress 2024, Cabinet approved for South Africa to host World Waste Congress in Cape Town from 15 to 15 September 2024. The event is being organized by the International Solid Waste Association, an international network of waste professionals, and an expert from across the world. The Congress will benefit South Africa as delegates will share correct trends and best practices in the waste management. The Congress will attract international experts and technology providers, and South Africa's informal waste sector and small business will benefit. In 2011, Cabinet approved the National Waste Management Strategy for implementation. The National Waste Management Strategy has 8 key goals, including promoting waste, minimization, reuse, recycling, and recovery of waste. It also helps the country to deliver effective and efficient waste services and grows the contribution of the waste sector to the green economy. South Africa is also party to international agreements that relate to waste management issues. Selection of the host city for the 15th BRICS Summit. Cabinet approved that Gauteng would host the 15th BRICS Summit to be held in South Africa from the 22nd to the 24th of August 2023. South Africa assumed the rotational chairship of BRICS Forum from 1st January 2023 under the theme Open Code BRICS and Africa Partnership for Accelerated Growth, Sustainable Development and Inclusive Multilateralism, close quote. South Africa membership of BRICS has grown substantially since the country joined this group of emerging economies 12 years ago. To date, over 17% of South Africa's exports were destined for other BRICS countries, whilst over 29% of our total imports came from these countries. On the upcoming events, Human Rights Month. The country commemorates Human Rights Month under the theme, Open Code, Consolidating and Sustaining Human Rights Culture into the Future, close quotes. Cabinet encourages South Africans to celebrate our rich cultural heritage and diversity that has the power to unite our nation. Let us pay tribute to those who sacrificed their lives in our struggle for freedom to ensure we may enjoy human rights and continue to work towards inclusive socio-economic development as envisioned by our forebears. On the messages, special messages, congratulations. Cabinet extended its congratulations and well wishes to the following: South African women cricket team for flying the flag high by reaching their inaugural ICC Women's T20 World Cup final hosted in the country. We celebrate and salute them for their stellar performance. The South African women's ice hockey team, who made their debut in the Women's Ice Hockey World Championship, which was being held in Cape Town. SA Hockey for successfully hosting the FIH Indoor Hockey World Cup in Pretoria from the 5th to 11th February 2023. African champions Banyana following their performance at the Turkish Women's Cup, where the team was crowned winners of the Group A and brought a trophy back. The organizers of country's first successful hosting of Formula E race on the African continent held in Cape Town. The city joined 11 other global cities holding the Formula E World Championship, run on 100% renewable energy. Mr. Khalib Kasim, as ESCOM Interim Group CEO, who takes over from Mr. Andre Marinas de Reiter, who is wished well in his future endeavors. The people of Nigeria, following the declaration by the African Union Electoral Observation Mission on a successfully held general elections. On condolences, Cabinet expressed condolences to the family and friends of Peter Cyril Jones, liberation activist and leader of Black People's Convention. Her Royal Highness Prince Alice, the daughter of King Solomon Kadenizulu. Paul Hebbs, Director of Media Response, respected and dedicated leader in the field of emergency medical services, who recently assisted in the country's rescue mission in Turkey and Syria. Rafik Rohan, noted journalist and former South African political prisoner, jailed in Robben Island, who once served as the founding editor of the government newspaper Vukuzenzele, news editor and later political editor at the Sowetan, executive editor of the Star newspaper, and more recently as a senior editor at Al Jazeera. On appointments, all appointments are subject to verification of qualifications and relevant security clearance. Mr. Hisham Emaren, as Group CEO of Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, commonly referred to as PRASA, Mr. Tembari Khotso, as the CEO of Land and Agricultural Development Bank of South Africa and Executive Director on the Land Bank Board of Directors. Mr. Maisela Kekana, as Deputy Director General Climate Change and Air Quality Management at the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. Cabinet concurred on the following appointments: Non-Executive Board of Directors of the Airport Company South Africa, Advocate Sandile Noqina, Chairperson, Mr. Yashin Pillay, Dr. Khabo Hendrik Badimu, Ms. Domfuti Mvelase, Ms. Dudu Hlatshayo, Mr. Kobani Mangojo, Ms. Bongile Rejoice Sambo, Ms. Nonzukiso Siutula. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, very much. We're now going to be moving to questions. We will first take the questions of the colleagues who are with us in presence, and then move to the questions of the colleagues who are joining us online. What we will request is for anyone who would want to ask a question, just to introduce themselves and the media house that they represent. Okay. Maybe let me just say we'll take first 5 hands, if possible, and then Minister will then respond. You are the first one. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much. My name is Govin Whittles from Newsroom Africa. Minister, did the Cabinet discuss at all whether there would be a reprioritization of funds for the state of disaster in the energy sector and how much that would be? Did the Cabinet say whether it disagreed with the decision or with the assessment by the United States government on the advisory posed over that there is no threat that warrants the stockpiling of that food and supplies? Lastly, I'm not sure if you'd be able to answer, Minister, would it be appropriate for government ministers to be outlining their programs of action for the rest of the year when we're anticipating a cabinet reshuffle? Thank you.
Can come in.
Mondli Gungubele from ENCA. Just a follow-up on what my colleague has asked on the issue of the US alert. Will the South African government, through DERCO, following diplomatic channels, of course, be engaging with the Americans following the release or the issuing of this seemingly bizarre alert? If so, when is that going to happen? Number 2 is just a clarity-seeking question on the BRICS summit and the host city or the host province. If my memory serves me well, Durban in KwaZulu-Natal was said to have been the preferred host city for the summit. What has changed? What made the government to re-evaluate and decide to come up with Gauteng as the
You mean on BRICS?
Yes, BRICS summit, yes. Number 3, Cabinet seems to have to sing high praises for former Deputy President David Mabuza, yet critics would argue that he has been missing in action for the better part of his term of office. This praise that you sing of former Deputy President David Mabuza, what do you base it on? Is it based on performance? Because clearly many South Africans would appear to disagree with you on that one. If we have time, the last one from me, on the issue of 22 Afghan nationals that the Department of Home Affairs vehemently opposed their application for asylum visas to be granted, but the court said they must be granted. What is the position of the South African government in that regard? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think let me allow Minister to come in first. I think this is okay.
Okay, can we have finished?
We'll come back.
More substantively.
Okay.
More substantively, it's Governor again.
That was gear 1.
Thanks. No, it's just to add on to the initial question. Has the Cabinet received any reports of anticipated civil unrest in South Africa? Just adding on to that US question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Minister, over to you.
Governor asked if I got you. You said incidental upon pronouncing state of disaster. Is there reprioritization of funds and whatever? As I'm saying, we will be briefing the country on the regulations which we have already issued. Whether there's a reprioritization of funds and maybe taking particular approach on certain procedural requirements will depend on issue by issue, and then will be followed in line with the regulations. Regulations are very clear when should you reprioritize and not, but we're not able to say on those items. All what we have done, if you remember, the purpose of the declaration, 1 is to fast track execution, 2 to minimize impact. So as we are sitting, different departments, we are actually assessing with regard to how the regulations are actually assisting them to ensure that from their respective department, they do ensure that we minimize the impact. Whether there will be reprioritization of funds or not, it will depend on issue by issue. The department, the only thing Cabinet could support is the regulations to be applicable as enunciated. If you check our statement, what we're saying, we're just stating the fact that that alert is a normal alert that sometimes America does, not only in South Africa, in a number of countries talking to its citizens. All what we're saying to South Africa, in as far as our information is concerned, we don't have that. And we're making a commitment that when that instance or that situation develops, we'll actually take the nation into confidence. Whether then we're having engagement, yes, engagement, we expect the engagements to continue because at times it has a potential to actually create serious problems in the country. If you remember the alert in Sante, sort of disturbance it caused in the country. People were not sure whether to believe South Africa or whether to believe the United States. Because when we were saying to South Africans, if there is such a warning, there is such a development, we'll let you know, but would not undermine. If another country says in your country, they think there is something, you don't just dismiss it. You check it and then come back to your process based on our information. There is no basis. That's the kind of engagement we have with that. So it answers Pamandla whether those the engagement will continue to be there to actually nudge America that whatever concerns we have about one another's citizens, they must not unintentionally, I want to argue unintentionally, lead or spill over to other things we have not actually, would have not actually planned for. On the BRICS venue, I will respond to your questions, Pamela, more positively than saying why. When the delegation and a number of logistic imperatives were analyzed for this conference, Gauteng became a leader in terms of facilities required. So against that background, Gauteng's capacity found the way to be chosen. On the Afghan nationals, we're taking the cue from the minister on this, because there was a debate whether appeal or not, but the court's advice is that what you are concerned about in the appeal is what you can consider when you consider whether they qualify for whatever kind of status. Court may not be the necessary platform to deal with that. So we're taking a cue in as far as that matter is concerned. But we remain concerned that any country or any human being can just dump people in a country and then automatically expect that this country must just say yes, eleto. So we're taking a cue from the Minister of Home Affairs, who has demonstrated a lot of energy in dealing with this matter. Sure, spell it.
Former Deputy President.
Oh. Thank you very much. Maybe let me put it this way. Deputy President Mabuza has been allocated tasks by the President, whether it's on HIV, the transformation in a traditional leader, and then in rural development, and even in ESCOM testing, and all those matters. In terms of the records in front of the President, the Deputy President did care. By the way, if I may take this opportunity, when we talk about, as we say here, for instance, if I give an example, that there's a lot of things we don't speak about which are very positive. For instance, did we all know that the economy grew by 12.5% last year? Did you all know that after a long time, 2022 gave us no less than 1.5 million up employment positive results? I can go on, and then did you all know that one of the biggest cry in Guyana of connecting water from Ndoni to Nzami Dam, that has been completed? I can go on and list these issues that were found solutions and to fund huge water scheme interventions. All this work, it's happening under the presidents where Deputy President Mabuza has been part. Thanks.
Online questions. Pelisa, can you help us just reach through?
Thank you. The first question we have is from Christian to perceive level 24. Minister Pravin Gordhan has acknowledged that Mr. Curator reported the allegations of corruption to him. The question is, did Minister Gordhan share this detail with Cabinet, and what was done about it? If not, did Minister Gordhan not have a duty to report it to Cabinet? Does Minister Gordhan not himself have an obligation in terms of PRECA to report it? The second question from Christian still. When will President Ramaphosa announce the reshuffle of his cabinet? Will it be today? Moving on, the next question is from Paul Becchiato from Bloomberg. He is asking, was Cabinet surprised by the Deputy President's resignation as a Member of Parliament? and by the rapid appointment of the Minister of Finance as a Member of Parliament, because both events took place very suddenly and with none of the usual announcements that formally precede such events. The third question, the third person that is asking the questions is Kulekani Magubane from Business Times. His question is, did Cabinet discuss the looming electricity tariff hike, which comes amid worsening load shedding and rising fuel prices? How successful was the President, if at all, in holding off this hike from coming into effect in April? The next question is from Anton Meyer from Pretoria FM. He is asking about the deadline for the electoral amendment bill. He says it was on the 28th of February as ordered by the Constitutional Court. Now the question is, did President Cyril Ramaphosa take Cabinet into his confidence on why he failed to meet the deadline to sign the bill into law? Paul again comes back to ask how long does Cabinet expect to rectify the issues around the FATF grey listing? And
can you repeat that?
How long, that is Paul Vekiaki from Bloomberg, is asking how long does Cabinet expect to rectify the issues around the FATF grey listing? And he's also asking, has Cabinet been informed about a proposed U.S. Congress bill to review that country's ties with South Africa following the military exercises with Russia and China? If so, what will the South African government's response be? That is all for now, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Peliso. Minister, over to you.
To end the salary. Colleagues, the stance of the Cabinet, we are not going to respond differently on this matter, is that the allegations by former CEO director are called upon by all of us to present facts so that we can deal with those. And of course, there are institutions established to deal with that. Even if those allegations he made to the Minister of Department of the Public Enterprise, Mr. Gordon, it doesn't change the fact that finally they must be dealt with by appropriate institutions. So we leave that matter there because, to be honest with you, we take serious what the CEO has raised. But we also argue that a CEO can do better, because a CEO is put in a position of power, empowered to deal with that information, unlike an ordinary citizen who is an ordinary whistleblower. And we want to argue that a CEO can do better in that position, a CEO who really respect the fiduciary responsibilities that are accompanying the job. And we still believe the director can go further and actually give us more information. And we would request we leave this matter. Dealing with individual politicians, neither here. When you go to this, if you can check a number of names that have been actually dragged in public about this. Can you imagine every time somebody says Minister so-and-so, that this president must run? And I keep on using myself, Pamela, that not once, sometimes I was said to be leading a syndicate of billions in PIC. If we follow this, the president will say, come Mondli, wait, let's go and do investigation. Can go on, and so on. Sometimes it was said I committed a fraud by signing a contract. Or, I mean, you go and all these things, a lot of these things there are institutions to deal with them. We want to support, and we take serious what Mr. Director said, take into account that the positions he held. But I want to dare make this argument that I think a CEO can do better, and we think Mr. Director will take that into account to assist the country, because the fact that he makes that allegation, it means he's concerned about this, and also the cabinet would want to support him in that regard. On the reshuffle, you know the common answer. I just like I think Vincent dealt with this nicely. I was listening to him. He dealt with this nicely. You know that the president has acknowledged the need to close the gaps. The president has made an undertaking to appoint a minister of electricity. Naturally, once he acknowledges the gap and he makes an undertaking that job will be done. But the dates, time, the hour, the president. That's the one answer. There's always a hope that a different answer is going to come. Was the president surprised by what to call? By resignation? I don't think so. The president would have spoken about this even in public, that the president expressed his contemplation to leave, but he agreed that please wait a little bit. I want to move from a point that in line with his agreement with the president, he has acted in line with that. I want to believe. Swearing in of Minister Kodongwan. A number of times when the parliament is full, as you know, the president is entitled to a number of ministers who he can pull from outside the list. Sometimes if the gap is opened, if there's a gap that comes out in parliament, you've got no reason to have a minister who remains an outsider, because a minister who keeps a status of being a non-parliamentarian is a -1 vote. So if there's a gap, you need to close that gap. There are many reasons that could be done for. If the president might be considering somebody from outside to appoint as a minister, there could be many reasons, but I don't want to speculate the reasons, but I'm saying there's a number of reasons that lead to that. So I can't see Mr. Kodongwana falling outside those reasons. Did the cabinet discuss the tariff? The stance of the cabinet is in line with that of the president, that tariffs come at a time when the load shedding is actually hitting our people very bad. And the call by the president was that as the independent institution NSFAS deals with this thing, can you take into account whichever way you execute it, but this must be taken into account. The cabinet can't go beyond that, because NSFAS is an independent institution in this regard. But the cabinet, through the voice of the president, would have strongly spoken. I hope NSFAS will look at that, because we cannot instruct them on this matter. On the electoral bill, we accept the deadline by the Constitution, but the president has a duty to look at the bill critically, not just to sign because the date has come. So we want to assume that the president is exercising his responsibility in as far as authenticating that bill is concerned. And we hope within reasonable time the bill will go through. That's the little I can say about the electoral bill.
Thank you, Minister. We're now moving to the last round of hands, if there are any. Okay, just come in. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I saw the report from Stats SA, Minister, that 169,000 jobs were created in the quarter. There's a claim from the Democratic Alliance that 167,000 of those were created in the Western Cape. Did the Cabinet discuss the apparent inability of other provinces to create jobs at the same pace as the Western Cape? And then is there any clarity on when the SABC board will be confirmed?
All right, thank you so much. Just last question, Pelis.
There's no more questions, but the last question by Paul, the creator from Bloomberg, I'm not sure if Minister touched on it, but it says, how long does Cabinet expect to rectify the issues around the grey listing? And also,
I didn't answer that.
yeah, and also has Cabinet been informed about a proposed U.S. Congress bill to review that country's ties with South Africa following the military exercises with Russia and China? If so, what will the South African government's response be?
Okay. Thank you so much, Peliswa. Minister, we will allow you to respond to the last questions and also do the closing remarks. Thank you.
Just repeat the questions which I left out. I don't know how I left out.
The question, Minister, is how long does Cabinet expect to rectify the issues around grey listing, the FATF grey listing? And then the second one, has Cabinet been informed about a proposed U.S. Congress bill to review that country's ties with South Africa? And that follows the military exercises with Russia and China. And then if so, what will the South African government's response be?
Can I give you that? Oh, no, that piece. No, that one. Yes. Oh, yes. You see, the question of which province has created more job, I think it's an information that one must answer very careful, because I didn't look at those stats now before I came here. But I always feel, most of the time, that question belongs to, a lot of times, to the DA's propensity for black party about politics. Because we are more worried about that jobs must be created. They always want us to speak about where DA is. And when we engage them where DA is, they also run away. Because we just recently you would have said Tswana has been led by them for more than 3 years. Go to Joburg, go to Guruleni currently. Those are the politics we're not interested in now. We're interested that jobs are being created. Remember when we said here, we said we celebrate the Formula E, which has taken place in the Western Cape. We talk about the country in its entirety. So we're very lazy to engage in their energy of black party. That at home, my father can do it better than your father. So anyway, having said that, I think we'll look at that, because it's not an unimportant question, but one just is gotten used to the intention why they always make that statement. Of course, is it good if provinces compete? I guess it will be a good thing. You spoke about SABC. We are awaiting the decision of the president. As I've said, just in the same way we dealt with the bill, the president has got considerations to make before actually dealing with the SABC. Questions around a number of names and so on have been raised. And again, until there's a response to those questions, we expect the decisions to be taken. We want to make the point, though, Governor, that we are not comfortable that by now that SABC situation has not been attended to, because it's got serious implications for governance. But we also must respect that the fact that President is asking certain questions is also another matter of governance, especially from the view of the head of the state. He cannot be the first one to undermine that. On the FATF, How long will it take us to rectify? The sooner the better. We want to move by a huge speed on this matter. If you read the speech of the Minister of Finance, he said out of 15 deficiencies, the 2 bills deal with about 15 of them. Other 5 mean tinkering and changing certain regulations. So all relevant parties and the forum is moving at a speed. So the sooner the better. We don't want to say a timeline. We want to do it. If we can finish them before the end of this year, we'll be excited. So the sooner the better. That thing which casts aspersions on our economy, it's a matter we want to remove as quick as we can. On the resolution, we are following that process. That resolution is in processes in Parliament. It has not been adopted in a formal, by the Congress. But we are following it, and we are engaging United States. And the reason we are engaging United States is because we want to nudge each other that our productive relationship, it is both in the interest of United States as it is in the interest of South Africa. And I think there is a lot of peaceful engagement. There are ongoing engagements which are harmonious, and we see those engagements helping South Africa and United States find one another. Even on the issue of Lady R, exercises, take into account what is happening between Ukraine and Russia. United States may have the questions they have, but for them to know the truth or not is when we are engaging, and that engagement is ongoing. So far, I'm not disappointed with that engagement. But the resolution is a matter we're following. We hope that they will not take any decision that undermine the importance of our relationship in as far as both our countries are concerned. No less than 600 companies from the United States are here in South Africa. A lot of AGOA, I can go on, there's a lot of interest that binds America and South Africa. We hope that no decision will be taken to undermine such a very important relationship.
Thank you very much, Minister, for informing the public on the cabinet decisions. And would like to thank also all media houses that have sent representatives physically, and those who have connected online to make sure that the message is transmitted as widely as possible. It's really appreciated, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Oh. Asizobona ntambama minister masekumcimbi omkhulu.
Sorry, Minister. We're done. I just wanted to get clarity. Did you say the economy grew by 12%?
No, it's 2.5.
2.5.
Did I say 12?
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Did I say 12? Something it can't be me. Somebody else can do that, not me. It's 2.5.